Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, another summertime episode. Thanks once again to our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction for sponsoring the podcast.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Christopher, how are we doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah. A happy belated Father's Day to you.
And to you. Do you have a good one?
I did. Yeah. I
Okay.
had let's see, I think I had Whataburger for dinner.
Okay.
Wasn't really that special.
Well,
and
I mean,
and one of my kids is out of town and the other one was gone all day, so it's just kind of like a
right.
Father's Day kind of gets lost.
It is. It is probably the most forgotten of the holidays, and we get it as dads. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I did get to watch a lot of the U.S. Open, and I enjoyed that. So that was good. So.
It was good. I was hoping our guy Oberg, whatever you want to call him this week, would do a little better than he did for the weekend. But it's a monster of a tournament, and you can't make mistakes. Is there DeChambeau? I'm not wanting to get into this too much, but DeChambeau is one of those guys that seems to have turned his image around a ton in the last couple of years. I mean, there's some other guys that have done that in the past, but he used to be a pretty dislikable guy, and I don't know. He seems kind of likable now, running around letting everybody touch the trophy.
So you're buying it?
More so. I'm not all the way in, but
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I guess I'm just a cynic, but I can't decide how genuine it is.
Okay.
It seems like it's tilted too far to.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know, it almost comes off as quirky or forced. I don't know.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's not maybe fair, but it's like he was very opposite before, and now we've just totally tilted. So I'm like, which one are you really?
Right.
And maybe I just need to see it for a much longer period of time.
Understood.
I don't know. And that's not, but he does elicit a reaction, and he is definitely kind of
Sure.
Oh, I think the best phrase is, I think he's a needle mover. There's going to be people that have opinions about him one way or the other. So I think, that part is not, it made for good television because it's like, he's smashing it into the native land or whatever they were calling it, when it's basically just means you're in the junk. It was like off to every tee box, and he freaking just won the U.S. Open. I'm like, okay, I know nothing about the sports, because it's like he was really terrible off the tee and he still won. So.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to do
and
that.
He botched a very, very short makeable putt toward the very end and still won, because another guy missed two of those. So
yep.
Anywho.
So several topics we can get into. Level.
It was. I will say this: it was a big day for the ACC with Bryson winning and being an SMU grad and all that. Big day for the ACC.
Big day for the ACC. They can claim that one. Sure.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of different things. There's a few questions we'll get into, a basketball one, a couple of football questions, recruiting. But the big news. Well, there's some somewhat fresh news, and then we'll get into the Big 12 naming rights thing, because that's going to take up a lot. But new Ring of Honor members, got 3 new Ring of Honor members for Texas Tech. There's a couple of them that for me are well before my time, and then of course Wes Welker, who is a very popular name as well. But your reaction to seeing that news early this week?
It's a big class. Last time we did, what have they been doing this about every other year? It feels like
pretty close, yeah.
And then I guess 2 years ago, Pat went in by himself as he got all the, and it was arguably one of your worst games of the year that night too. Unfortunately, is Baylor. What was it, like 42-17 or something?
That was a rough one.
It was not good. I think this group's a 3-man class. It's a big one. I Yeah, obviously Thomas Howard and Andre Tillman were before my time as well, but I've been around long enough to understand
Sure.
the historical perspective that, you know, in 73 you went 11-1, and 76 I think you went 10-1, I think is right. And if you are a follower of Texas Tech football and history and all that, there's just not been that many years to where you've won double digit games.
Yeah.
'08 was another one. And there's just not been that many double digit win seasons in your program's history.
Yep.
And there's two of them in the 70s. And I think that most will tell you that they were either the best or one of the very best players on those particular teams. And so I think if you're telling the story of Texas Tech football, and they were both all Americans, I believe, both all conference, both NFL guys, and so they check a lot of the boxes. And people have tried to nail down the criteria here. And I don't know if there's any hard and fast rules per se.
Yeah.
But I think they check a lot of boxes in it. But I think the biggest thing is they were on two of the best teams in your program's history, and they were thought to be either one of, or if not the best players on those teams. But it's funny because like Andre Tillman, he caught all of 20, I think like 26 passes, if memory serves.
Yeah.
That year as a tight end. And again, the game was very different back then. Very different. Right. And so, but I think that's maybe the best way to phrase that on best players off of best teams. And again, they check a lot of the other boxes too, in that they were all American, they were all conference, they were NFL guys. So, and then obviously Wes was not an All American.
Sure.
However, he was a 5-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
If you go look that up, I think at one point he held or does hold several NFL records.
Yep.
I think you could put him in as a receiver / special teams demon. You know, I mean, it's like, I think, you know, at one point he held the college record for punt returns for touchdown. And that may have since been broken, but he once held it, or it was tied, or whatever it was.
Yeah, he had it. It was 8 touchdowns that he had, and he had it, and I think he still may be tied for the record. I'll have to look that up. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think when you look at totality of what he did, kind of what they've tried to make this be about, it's not all about what you did at Tech and all that, but he's coaching for the Dolphins now. And so, yeah, he's a no-brainer. Even though none of his teams technically were like the, you know, the other two guys, you know, they you know, Wes wasn't a part of a double-digit win season.
Right.
But I think, yeah, he kind of, in so many ways, I think more so in the pros, he kind of changed and really identified a position.
Yeah, no question.
Where everybody was trying to find the next Welker, you know, like the slot receiver, like your Cooper Kupps, your all these people. You know, even Danny Amendola is another one. I mean, who was one of your own guys. You know, and I mean, Wes played in multiple Super Bowls. You know, so yeah, I think that these are some no-brainer. I will say this though, I don't want to not mention this. Byron Hanspard needs to be in this deal.
100%.
Sorry, I'm sorry, but he does. Like it triggers me. Graham Harrell belongs in this deal. I don't care what the College Football Hall of Fame says or doesn't say. They belong in your.
Both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think somebody like Marcus Coleman, Tracy Saul. I mean, Tracy Saul was. How about try this one on? Tracy Saul, I believe I'm right here, Choice, and I think you can go look it up and we can see if I'm right or wrong. Okay. Tracy Saul was All Southwest Conference for 4 years.
Wow.
I mean,
that's hard to do.
It sure is
crazy. Yeah.
And I think I'm right there. So that was Southwest Conference, but I mean, come on, man. That's now I don't know specifically the records of your teams and all that. I know it wasn't a 10-1 or 11-1 or a 11-2 season like 73, 76, and 08 were. But anyway, so I'm just throwing that out there. Marcus Coleman, he was an All-American. He played with Zach in the mid 90s. He was a draft pick, had a fairly lengthy NFL career. But he was somebody that, and I watched this personally because he was on these teams whenever I was going to school at Tech, and he could do anything on a football field. Special teams, you want to drop him and cut. He was just way ahead of his time. He was a hybrid before that position was ever really created.
Sure.
And he was, an All-American was Zach Thomas. He had 2 All-Americans on the defensive side of the ball in 1995. And that team, his senior year, they went 9-3. Again, not exactly a whole lot of, past success that replicates like 9 or better seasons. So anyway, those are my thoughts. You may have different opinions, but those are mine.
Nope, I agree. I think there are a lot of names that deserve to be on this list. I think the first 2 you mentioned are your no-brainers that are still out there. And Byron Hanspard and Graham Harrell, both those guys, I think are your no-brainers, and maybe the next names you see in, but we'll see for sure. Okay, so moving on to a topic that has garnered a lot of interest over the last week or so, because it's something we've never seen before, and it is the Big 12 Conference reportedly shopping their naming rights, and not just the name of Big 12 Conference presented by Allstate or whoever it may be, but or talking about giving up the name of the Big 12 to potentially make it the Allstate 12, or we could throw it whatever, Dr. Pepper 12, or the Big Allstate, or whatever this is going to turn into. It almost, I mean, there's so much nowadays that sound like an Onion article, like here, but this one sounds like we've never heard of it because no one's, really thought to do something like this. I will say, money can buy you anything at certain prices, but this number, in my opinion, has to be through the roof to even consider something like this.
Yeah, and there's 2 things that came out. You have the naming rights of the league, and then there's the private equity thing. These are
Right.
separate. These are
Sure.
separate deals, separate conversations, separate strings attached, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm probably in the minority here, and if so, that's fine. I really don't care what they name the league. There's no tradition here.
Okay.
There's no. It doesn't. I'm so numb to patches on the jersey, logos on fields. Yeah, I mean, if it means a couple of extra million for every school, sell it. I mean, I really don't care. I would hope that it's a long enough deal to where you're not changing this every other year or something. It's not some short term. At that point, it becomes a bit JV or hokey or whatever. But I really can't be made to care about you're going to play in the and I'll get to my point in a second, but I can't be made to care that you're going to play in the All-State 12 title game in Arlington instead of the Big 12 title game. Because here's the thing.
Okay.
Choice, you and I are still going to call it the Big 12. Allstate or whoever is not paying, we're still going to call it the Big 12. We're going to refer to it as the Big 12. Everybody's going to know what we mean when we say that. It's like nothing really changes on our end of things in everyday conversation. I mean, it's taken a long enough time for me to learn to say Power 4 instead of Power 5.
I still don't say it right. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know
Yeah.
what? You're not gonna refer to it all the time in whatever you're doing in it's the all state 12. No, I mean, it's still going to be Big 12 and all that.
Do you still call it Twitter, or have you shifted over to X?
It's great example. I still call it Twitter because
It's still
everybody knows what I mean.
Yeah.
And yes, some people try to be formal. It's like the formerly known as X, formerly known as Twitter. It's just word salad.
Sure it is.
I mean, if you can if you can get outside the box a little bit and sell the name to the league, I have questions about the private equity stuff that are along these lines too, but
Okay.
what exactly are they getting for the naming rights to the league? And what I mean by that does this come with a patch on everybody's jersey? You know, because you have the Roman numeral 12 on everything that every coach is wearing, and it's on every jersey and every sport and all those things. I mean, what kind of rebranding are we talking about? And is Allstate going to be the ones that pay for all of those things and all that? And maybe it's not that much of an expense, but there's an expense that comes with
Right.
rebranding, and you've got that Roman numeral 12 on everybody's field, and they kind of mandated that. And so does that change? Does that have to change? That's also why I think that the number 12 is so important, and they're going to change the word big and not the number 12, because that Roman numeral and that 12 is what I think consulting firms have told you. This is how people, this is what they, you know, how they connect the
Associate.
dots. We know exactly who
Mhm.
this is when we see that. But there's not, the word big is not anywhere in on anything. It's that Roman numeral 12, even though you've got 16 teams. So those are my thoughts. But there was a time that I would have been like, please don't mess with the name of the league, or it's just, it seems hokey, or it's embarrassing, or those times are long gone. And I'm sorry, but there is no tradition. This is what, the fourth version of this league, you know? I mean,
You got 8 teams left from the original.
yeah, and I just, it's changed so much. It's likely to continue to change. I mean, if it means Brett Yormark is doing exactly what he was asked to do,
Sure.
present opportunities to add revenue, and it's like, boys, here you go.
Mhm.
Because think about it, Woodman, this is free money. What exactly are you giving up? If you're Texas Tech University, what are you conceding? What are you giving up in exchange for $2 million? I'm just landing on that number as like that seems
Sure.
to be kind
Well,
of in the general sweet spot.
uh,
And what are you giving up? I
pride.
mean,
I mean, if you care about that kind of thing,
when Texas and Oklahoma took that a long time ago when they cruised.
sure.
Yeah, I just don't, I can't be made to, yeah, I think pride needs to, you need to put that in the back pocket, and,
Well, it is one of
you
the
know.
7 deadly sins, so maybe you should put it away. I
Yeah, that's right.
I yeah, I think, well, before we, yeah, explain the private equity stuff to me, because I still don't. I'm trying to wrap my head around that, because that's a separate thing from this altogether.
It is very much a separate thing. I will tell you that this is my opinion.
Hmm.
I think the naming rights thing seems very likely to happen.
Okay.
It's not gonna, it's not earth-shattering money. It's also not earth-shattering concession to me. To me, again, this is me talking.
Mhm.
You kind of, it sounds like, feel differently, but this is going to be and I'm not certain that it's all state. I mean, that's what was leaked.
Right.
This may have been floated to try to entice other folks, and maybe we'll see what dollar figure they land on and all those things. I'm gonna guess this is like at least a 5-year deal, maximum 10-year deal whenever all is said and done. But I think this is very likely to happen, or something along these lines, selling the naming rights to the league in exchange for just cash that everybody, you know, that you get to split 17 ways. Conference gets a cut, 16 members get a cut, and I think you can go buy a power forward like Kansas State did last week for $2 million. They've
Mhm.
already spent their money, naming rights money
Yep.
on Coleman Hawkins.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that. The private equity thing is a completely different conversation altogether. It is a massive amount of money, whereas the naming rights is not. And some people may have an issue with it not being worth more money. That, you know, if we're going to do this, shouldn't we be getting more money? Well, I'm not out there in the streets negotiating. I don't really know what something like that is worth. Nor would I have known what 20% of your league was worth, but I guess we now know what the folks in Luxembourg, the firm there, feel that it's worth. And I guess your league is worth close to $5 billion. If they give you $1 billion, And I don't think this is the slam dunk. I think there's a lot of folks that have questions. I think that this is Brett Yormark introducing this concept. I think he is trying to do what he was tasked to do. It's like, you wanted more money, folks. You asked me ways to generate revenue. Well, here is a giant fat check, and you want to be with the SEC and the Big Ten per year. Here you go. And that's the reality of the kind of money that they're looking to give you. Now, where you have questions and where I had questions, and I still don't have all the answers, and I don't know if any of us do, the people directly involved may not. But my question is, okay, now at that point, what are you conceding there? What exactly does 20% of your league consist of? Like, what do the folks in Luxembourg get? Private equity is dirty words for a lot of folks out there. There's a lot of people that say, no brainer, you should do it. Like, you're crazy not to. Other folks are saying, run the other way. They're going to destroy you. They're going to suck everything they can out of it. They're only worried about profit. They don't understand the business of college athletics, this and that. And so, somewhere in the middle is we've got to figure out. In its simplest terms, this is what I think. I think that they would basically purchase a vote on conference business. I think their vote wouldn't count any more than Texas Tech's or Iowa State's. I mean, they get all votes, and I don't know exactly how the bylaws are set up, and do you have to have majority, or do you have to have this or that on conference business? Nor do I even really know what they actually vote on. But you are, I think, if you're Luxembourg, you're getting a seat at the table on how your league does its business. I'm a bit uncomfortable with that, but again, it's if they just have this one vote and everybody, I mean, you could totally tell them to,
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, if they get 20% of the vote, that's what's dangerous to me. That's where it would be.
And I don't think that anybody will concede that. But again, they don't just give you a giant check and expect nothing in return. But what they are ultimately, because here's all the questions that I have, that Choice, you try to answer them for me. You're not going to be able to, but these are the things that went into my head.
Okay.
How long is this for?
Yeah.
Like, we're giving you this money. When do we expect to be paid back? Like, when do we, and what if it's not going like we would like it? Can I sell my 20% to somebody else? And now the Big 12 is in business of some unnamed, that's I'm uncomfortable with that. So this is the fine print you have to get into. What happens if there is a future split and there is more Big Ten, SEC, NFL flavor? Does this follow me?
It's a great question. Yeah.
The flip side, if the AACC breaks apart and say, okay, we get to have conversations with NC State, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, some of those ones that would connect the dots up there with West Virginia and Cincinnati and the like. Do they get to tap into these funds? Is it pro rata, like the TV deal? Like, does Luxembourg start, okay, well, now you've got more members and now we're going to give you more money and all these things. I mean, I'm just curious how that part works, coming and going, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is, to dumb it down, essentially what they are betting on is that there are people in the industry that feel like you didn't get what you are worth from a media rights standpoint. You got, I think you did pretty well. And then I think as the Pac-12 found out, okay, they've taken it all. There is none left for the rest of us. We're screwed. So now we're defunct. But I think this is why Brett Yormark wanted to sign a shorter term deal, because he's ready to get back and take another bite at the apple fairly soon with a lot more media, streaming services and different things potentially involved, that they could get a lot more. This is what this company is betting on, that you will get paid and then some.
Yeah.
And that basically along the way they get a vote, but essentially they're going to take 20% of that. The end.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, and so
I
the
feel like I
question,
need to go to business school just to understand
well,
this.
and
There's so much.
and the questions are too, okay, what happens if we decide not to take this money?
Yeah.
What does that mean for us? I mean, are you going to have to, is it going to be that much different between the SEC and the Big Ten and like you to where you're losing coaches because you can't afford to pay salaries? You don't have the NIL money that they have. Are you going to have to cut sports? I'm just asking hypothetical questions. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Versus what happens if you do take this money? What do I get to use it for? Is it just all NIL? Is it salaries? Is it more facilities? I mean, what exactly are we doing with this extra 20 to 25, 30 million a year?
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, well, now we don't have to worry about the revenue sharing component. This is what's going to pay for it for however the time frame is on whatever they're agreeing on the terms of this deal. I'm just, so I'm all over the place a bit, but those are a lot of the questions I have about what exactly it entails. I mean, what are they purchasing? And then what are okay, with this money, this happens. Without this money, this happens. And we don't know that. But I think there's a lot of hesitancy about from the board and league presidents and all the like about
a decision like this. Surely you have to have a unanimous vote on it, right? From the Big 12
again.
presidents
I don't know that
because I can't imagine a decision that huge.
Well, you're not gonna. This isn't all or nothing though component. This is, in other words, like half the league could go, yeah, we'll tap into it. Well, they can have 20% of our. I mean, I think this is like a league wide, or we're either all in or all out. But yeah, I don't know to get to that point on the vote. I don't know if it's 80% or if it's over 50% or if it's going to be unanimous. I'm not real sure, but there'll be a lot of questions asked. But again, Brett Yormark was tasked with bringing in you money, and he's basically two separate deals that were reported on the same day. Gentlemen, this is what you asked me to do. Here you go. Here's the other component that I think people need to consider. Has he done a good job as commissioner in his short time frame? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. What happens if what happens if pride gets in the way, or your uncomfortability with them having a seat and a voting share, whatever the terms are of the deal, and pride gets in the way on the naming rights thing, and everybody says, no, man, we want money, but we just don't want to do it in either one of these ways. To me, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but you probably run the risk of him going, man, I've done all I could here.
Yeah.
But when somebody calls, I may look at, going to lead something else because I've kind of taken this thing as far as I could. So I don't know where he sits on this deal. And you can't operate your business or your school fearful of pissing off the commissioner. There's a lot of strings here that are attached to different things. Anyway, just things to consider.
Yeah, so much to consider. And Level, I think the majority of people out there, I don't know where you stand on it, but the vast majority of college football fans would probably say the Big 12 isn't around in 10 years. You would think that, or 15 years or whatever, you'd think that maybe this super league or two leagues or whatever the split off is that's the part I think that's a part of the private equity thing that is so intriguing to me is if you end up without a Big 12, what happens with that? What happens?
I mean,
so
because these folks are the private equity folks, the general consensus is, and I think some of the criticism is, they invest a ton of cash, but then they squeeze a profit.
Yeah.
And they don't care how they get to that point. And if they can come in and say, hey, folks, women's tennis is just not making any money at all. Get rid of it. Hey, you need to let's start playing on Wednesday nights. The media rights folks are willing to pay you a lot more money for playing your games on a Wednesday night. And that's where we can get our money back on this. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It's just some examples on, I just don't know how involved they would be allowed to be. And again, I may be worrying about something that isn't really a thing anyways. So I just these are what's running around in my head. And I know it's sick and twisted up here in this space up top in between my ears, but this is what kind of I was very curious about. I mean, I never thought about selling a portion of your league.
No,
I didn't know it was for sale.
no, that's
And what am I purchasing when I do that? But I think that to simplify it, I think they want 20% of your revenue
yeah. I mean, I think Brett.
in exchange for a rainy day fund that's larger than you and
It,
I will ever, I mean, be
I
able to
can't.
comprehend.
I can't help but just feel like we're in a big episode of Shark Tank right now. That's what it feels like. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll give you this much for 20% equity. Then yeah,
Yeah.
it just feels like that. All right, we got a few questions from the audience before we wrap up. Level. We'll of course talk more about the private equity and the naming rights as we learn more over the coming weeks this summer. But Leah first from Twitter asks, at this point, do you think the last two scholarships for Texas Tech men's basketball will end up being filled?
Yeah, there was some talk that Jazz Henderson, who was supposed to be a walk-on, is now, and he was a recruitable player
Yeah.
that I think he maybe has taken one. I wouldn't be surprised if they use it or if they just held on to it. I've tried to maintain. I think the big moves have already taken place. I don't think you were, unless something just falls in your lap that was unexpected. I just don't envision using one of those on anybody that was going to be in you were planning on to start or be in your rotation or a big rumored NIL deal or anything like that. So I think to answer the question, one of them may have been used. I don't know if there's an official announcement on that or not. That was just a rumor, and I had reason to believe that there may have been some truth to that. So we'll
Right.
see. I don't think anybody has to make a decision on that. He was coming here no matter what. If
Right.
maybe you don't end up using it by the fall, maybe at that point he gets it. We'll see. But I think that the coaches do like to hold on to one. Just you just don't know what's running around in the portal at semester. So we shall see.
Here's a football recruiting question. This one's from Ben. It says, I don't keep up with recruiting much, but I'm seeing lots of commitments on Twitter. Level, how are we doing compared to the others in the new Big 12?
This has changed a bunch. I mean, heck, as it's time we're sitting here talking, they had whether he decommitted or he got dropped. The kid from TJ Tillman from Amarillo Tescosa is no longer dealing that. I don't know if that's factored into any of your numbers. And there's been some additions and subtractions all going on back and forth in the last couple of weeks. Another visit weekend coming up this weekend. I do think your top three in the league, like if you pay attention to recruiting rankings, if you're into that, it's which they're non or imperfect. It's quality, it's quantity. There's some of both that factor in. There's all kinds of things, and I think you've got work still left to do, spots still left to fill, and things like that. But I think you're in the top two or three in the league as it stands right now on paper. But again, that depending on what day you look at it, when the decommit gets factored in, and then you add somebody else and all these different things. So
Right.
that's a better question to figure out where you stand in mid-July when after this recruiting, when you get into that dead or quiet period, I guess I should say, because the bulk of your recruiting class should be largely put together by mid-July or late July for sure. Not that there won't be some movement, but I mean, large in part, it should be for the most part put together.
Right. One final question before we wrap it up. This one is from Vic. It says, Level, if Joey McGuire and Texas Tech win 9 or 10 games this season, will Coach McGuire get a contract extension?
And real quick, just so I was looking it up while we're sitting here talking. Right now, you
Okay.
have the 25th best class in the country.
Okay.
And that does factor in no TJ Tillman. Again, you and I are at the time we're talking and all that. So again, by the time somebody hears this, it could be slightly different. So I'm just trying to give you some context.
Sure. Yeah, it's ever changing.
I think that there would be nothing more that Kirby, the Regents, who have a heavy influence on football or support football and all that, there would be nothing more that they would love to do than give Joey McGuire a contract extension.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that would mean that you had a really good year and you continue to like the general direction. And for all the gnashing of teeth and for the missed opportunity last year, if you want to call it that.
It's fair.
You still have 2 winning records in the Big 12 back-to-back years. That had not been done since Mike was here.
Right.
You've won bowl games in back-to-back years. Been a minute, folks.
Yeah.
And yes, there are other things you wanted to achieve. You want to be relevant. You want to get to Arlington and all those things, but it hasn't been bad in his first 2 years. And I think they wisely tried to take care of him before the win over Ole Miss. And really, since that pen got put to paper, he's won 2 bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, at some point you want to graduate from that. You want to move on to the next phase and be relevant in a conference race end of November, and you want to play for the title and see about the playoff and all those things. I would say that as advertised has been the recruiting, like we were just talking about. This is what he was hired to do. You haven't exactly lived in the top 25 of the recruiting rankings. There was many years where you were 38th, 45th, 64th. I mean, just kind of an afterthought. And I think they are doing exactly what they were hired to do, and they were recruiting. And so when these start to stack up, and I think you'll start to see some of that infiltrate the depth charts immediately this year. I'm kind of like the window that you're about to get into here. Mostly all his players and all those things. So I think they would love nothing more than to say, hey man, we'd like to pay you more money and keep you here for longer.
Sure.
I know Joey, Debbie, the whole crew would love to be here for a long, long term. And I would love that too. I know you would too.
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah.
Level, flew by again. Appreciate it. That was
my favorite thing about, speaking of Debbie, is that when Joey would tell that story on the coaches show, you were sitting right next to me when some of this was happening. This is Joey telling this. There's just not many coaches that are this transparent, and it's like funny, but it's serious. But it's I just loved it.
It's great.
And you already know where I'm going to go with this. She's like, I love her, but she's like, sweetheart, I love living here. You need to win some games. I mean, it's
great.
just they are pure salt of the earth.
They really are. Yep.
Yeah, and I hope that they are here long term. But obviously, we all understand the business. You have to win to do that. But hey, man, I've taken up enough of your time, Woodman. Thanks for humoring me here. Thanks to Cantex Roofing. Hopefully, I didn't confuse you, Choice. I saw you scratching your head a few too many times.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's very confusing, but hopefully we have a semi-decent grasp of it.
Sure.
But there's still probably plenty that we don't know too. But we'll talk to you next time.
All right. That's Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. Been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.